and she said, I already submit to 4 inspections from DCFS or fire marshal and 2 more. I get 6 inspections a year. I've only got 6 kids at my home or whatever it was. And this ordinance requires me to submit to additional inspections at additional costs, which frankly I can't afford. She said, we really appreciate your momentum, and I can give you $25 to contribute to printing or whatever it is. So, who's behind it? There is a home-based accountant. There is the hairstylist. There is the daycare. And it goes from home-based business to industry. Industry has sat at the table of the focus meetings and talked about numerous communications that they've had with city staff. And it's everybody in between. It's everybody that owns a building, it's everybody that has a business.
I understand that. Why did it come out in the first place? Why did they want to put together the 8 ordinances?
Why did they want to put together the ordinances? The claim was that there were 3 dangerous buildings that they were not able to safely address under the existing laws. That's not true. On September 8th, we pointed them to a couple of laws. One is called nuisance, the other is called criminal housing management. There were plenty of laws on the books. What it appeared, from my humble opinion, is that some staff members were trying to make up for some revenue.
Everybody got that?
Other questions? Can we grab one in the back?
So in reading this, then keep in mind is that we're reading this to safety. In other words, the overall goal is this ordinance is to make places safe, right? So I'm
No,
thinking,
I just want money.
no, I mean, as we're reading our ordinance, or the focus ordinance, the primary goal is safety. Yeah?
Are you saying is the overall purpose safety?
Yeah, in other words, they're trying to make these buildings safer or whatever, and
The primary purpose is safety. But it's safety in the context of business-friendly as opposed to unnecessarily harassing.
Did we FOIA all the requests for commercial buildings with citations or complaints?
Yeah, and I'd have to talk to the other people. Mike Carpenter, commercial real estate broker, asked if we made official requests for the public documentation relating to all complaints and citations for building violations. And there's probably some people in the room that can speak to that, but my understanding is the information was requested but not produced. Parts of it were produced, but not what was needed. The law requires there to be a rational relationship between sweeping legislation and the reality in the community. We are not downtown Detroit. And we don't want to be downtown Detroit. The legislation is not needed. They cleaned up all the problems, or could clean up all the problems under the existing law, but it does bring to our attention the opportunity to make our community grow through a business-friendly ordinance. I honestly think that City Council, if they read this, they're going to say, well, I don't see the problem, and they'll consider passing it. There's not radical things in here. And if the staff says to them, oh no, it requires an outside inspection before you can go inside, then the city council should say, well, what's wrong with that? And oh, by the way, you sort of omitted the part where it doesn't require an outside inspection if there's an emergency. And then the city council member should say, well, that really sounds okay to me. Why shouldn't I vote for this? And the answer is, you should vote for it. Other questions? Yes, sir.
One other thing too, do we have any idea how much city staff time has been spent on doing this? And the last time I looked, they don't have the printing presses to develop any money. It all comes from all of us. So, you know, why did this even, well, I guess we already know why it started with that. You know, this is quite an expense that all of us are paying for, and I think everybody else in this room has better things to do than be sitting here talking about an ordinance.
Okay, absolutely. There is an unlevel playing field issue happening right now. What's happening right now is not our day job. We elected people so that we didn't have to do this. And now we're checking on the elected people. Let's talk about resources. To quote one of my former government co-employees, we're not broke until the taxpayers are broke. So what does that mean? That means if we send a Freedom of Information Act request to see how much Dean Frieder's legal billing is on this ordinance and how long he's been working on it, that is your money that paid for it. I guarantee you it is not an attorney-client privilege. They must produce that. That's public money. So somebody in this room might want to do that. I would recommend it. And when you look at it, look how much money is being spent. And then ask yourselves, how much do you want to kick in to match that? And then let's add the other staff dollar amounts. It's their day job. It's not your day job. They misled the city council, and that's why we're trying to unravel this right now. Yes, sir.
Has there been any discussion about the effects of these fines where businesses and homeowners are going to try to fix peeling paint or a minor roofing thing and possibly get themselves killed for what I call busy work?
Could you please ask that again?
These fines, people are going to get these notices like myself, and you're going to try to fix as much as you can, like a peeling paint on the front of the building or a minor roof patch. And I see people in my block now trying to fix this, get up on ladders, get up on roofs, when they really don't have the money to go out and pay for this, and under the guise of eliminating crime. I mean, I just wondered if there's been any discussion of the effect of, somebody in DeKalb getting killed because they're going to fix these minor violations.
There has been extensive discussions. They started at least 25 years ago. There have been housing task force since then. There are some very, very irresponsible property owners that contribute to crime. Maybe somebody sets up a crack house, they need to get in trouble. Maybe somebody has unsafe conditions where somebody gets harmed. They need to get inspected, they need to get it fixed, they need to get in trouble. The responsible property owners are in agreement with all of that. And we encourage the city to make those timely inspections and corrections. But I'm wondering if I answered your question.
Well, it sounds like there's no targeting. I mean, I don't run a crack house. I've been born and raised in DeKalb and been in my house 22 years. I don't have gang membership in my house. I just have my kids. And I don't understand why the targeting priority is just, people who have no crime or are not criminals. The businesses that are being targeted are not criminals. They're not running, gang-infested illicit activity.
And I'm not sure that specific inspections are easily addressed in a forum like this, possibly in a different setting. Yes, sir?
Yeah, my comment would be the unintended consequence of something like this is, let's say the commercial space out here doesn't rent to Old Navy or whoever because they're afraid of the cost of, inspections and things like that. We start losing a lot of middle-class jobs. We lose mid-level management. We lose people who can coach little league teams. So I hope there's more of a focus than just we want to keep our own money, but we want to keep the whole community strong for jobs and opportunity. And I don't know if Mike's going to talk about this, but I'd like a little more clarification on what we mean by business friendly, because business friendly doesn't mean business friendly to owners. It means business friendly to the community, to have good places to shop, good things to do, nice jobs, and that's my focus. And I think maybe Mike can talk about, how.
Yeah, right. First off, this proposed ordinance was not business friendly. And I tell you, I'd like to take a moment just to read an email that came from a business community member here. He's been in the community for over 30 years. Again, this ordinance almost passed. It came real close to passing, and when I was first contacted about it, I said, well, can I see, where's the ordinance? Can you see a copy of it? And, well, it's not out yet. Well, it's not out yet. Well, we waited until, I think it was Thursday or Friday before we even had that ordinance. And now if you want to sit down over the weekend and read 30 pages of jargon. I mean, a lot of people do have a lot of better things to do. But at any rate, somebody that did take the time to read it, here's what he said. He said, having built and owned quality buildings in the city of DeKalb for about 30 years, I have sometimes felt that the city was more obstructionist than helpful in my dealings with them. The proposed inspection ordinance shows that the current administration is tone deaf when dealing with its business community. The proposed ordinance is the worst, most heavy-handed, and most overreaching effort that I've ever seen from the city of DeKalb, subjecting every business in DeKalb to invasive, costly, time-consuming, disruptive annual inspections will not fix the partially collapsed Wurlitzer building. What it will do is hang a big anti-business sign on the city of DeKalb. The way that the city tried to make this ordinance law was sneaky, underhanded, and ought to be illegal. We need to stop this ordinance and make sure it's against the law for the city to act in this way again. And that's one of the reasons I concur with Mr. Coghlan. There needs to be an ordinance. We all want safe buildings in our community, but there needs to be an ordinance to make sure that this never happens again. Because in 3 years from now, if we're sleeping and if nobody's paying attention, we almost have this new ordinance. And this new ordinance is in my opinion, it's another tax. I talked to a lot of the retail people, a lot of industry, building owners, chains. Talked to the property manager over at DLC Shopping Center, or Buffalo Wild Wings and Egg Haven and Ross Dress for Less. They own over 120 power centers in 9 different states. They took a look at this, they'd never seen anything like it. That's anti-friendly. Now, unfortunately, we're also in an anti-friendly state, our fine state of Illinois, and hopefully things are going to get better. But I took this off of thumbtack.com, and they say Illinois is at the bottom, one of the worst states to try to do business in, and they had an overall rating. They said overall friendliness, ease in starting a business, regulations, health and safety, employment, labor and hiring, tax code, licensing, environmental, zoning, training and networking programs. I was recently at a deal-making show, and I mentioned this last week. I was down at Navy Pier trying to work on some empty buildings that I'm trying to get leased up. And went around and talked to a lot of different communities. There was a lot of municipalities there, and DeKalb was there as well. But I was talking to one economic development director in particular from Huntley, and I was asking how their housing recovery is coming. And they told me that it's pretty good, that they're on course to build over 200 houses. I said, really? Well, how many did you build last year? They said, well, we built 200 and 180 before that. Now, we all know the housing market is down, but we all know how critically important that is to get a community up and going again, with people working and building houses. And if we're not building houses, all the existing inventory, well, it's not going up in value. It's not appreciating. So right now we have pretty hefty impact fees in our housing. We got fees for everything. Here's another one. So I think that a business-friendly community has incentives for people to want to come here and live here. And, probably they're right on I-90. We're right on I-88. We've got a great industrial tax base, a good health care system, a mid-major university, a lot of apartments. We're creating a lot of property tax. Yet our property taxes in DeKalb are pretty high. They're real high. Our sales tax is real high. Everything about this community is shrinking, and people are leaving. They're exiting this community. People now want to go over to Sycamore, live in Sycamore. They're on par to build 40 houses this year. They're half our size. We haven't built, I don't know if anybody knows the number, Will, but I think over the last...
3 or 4. 3 or 4.
In the last 6 years?
No, this year. 3 or 4.
Do you know, Mike?
4 last year and 2 the year before and none before that.
Jeez.
So Huntley, Illinois, 200. We're building a distribution center. The Weber Grill Distribution Center, 1 million square feet. I mean, if we want to be business friendly, we got to get this community going. We got to incentivize, not tax, not make it tougher. Not every time you want to lease a space, look at this beautiful building. If the tenant moves out, now we got to have a re-inspection. If he was here temporarily for 6 months, we got to have another inspection. You know, we've got a makeshift podium here. I don't know what you have in that drum, Dave, but you know, I hope it's not hazardous waste. Business friendly is we want your business. We'll do this. You know, and we don't have that. So I hope I answered your question, but.
And I think, Mike, what this did was, I think it brought 3 issues to light now. One is the ordinance itself. 2, as we started getting emails and information, how unfriendly DeKalb is to business, and this was kind of the nail in the coffin to just bury it. And so it also has opened up discussions of how we can be more business friendly that Focus is looking at. And the last thing now that we have unveiled is really the process that the city of DeKalb is how they conduct business. From how they are disclosing public policy and ordinance changes and involving the public hearing process, non-compliance of open meeting act violations potentially. What's morphed out is really now 3 things. And as I said earlier, you start asking one question and you open that door and it leads to more and more questions. And so really what started out as just an ordinance, and it's the citizens, it's you people as this group spreads that are the voice to the council. We wouldn't be up here if it wasn't for you, the citizens, supporting us. And it takes the citizens and your input to make a change. What other questions can we answer? Go ahead.
It's probably a real naive question here, but how can we be more involved in how to staff these transient policymakers with no vested interest in DeKalb get hired here and spend less time in their posts than an IU football coach? And they set policies in place that we're going to adhere to for the rest of our lives. They're here for 2 years, 3 years, and they're down the road. These are stepping stone positions. They're not, positions that people are in for long terms. Who makes those decisions? Is it the council only? And how can people be more involved in how we put these policymakers in place?
I can talk now because the mayor's on. There's only 2 of us here.
Come on up here.
Dave, come up front.
Come up to our podium, Dave.
I come to city council sometimes and I sit there and go, I'm not going to talk. But I had to go take a break because I wanted to talk. You're experiencing the frustration I've had for almost 14 years. I think this last time I ran because I was frustrated with Mark Bernanke. We knew we had 6 votes to tell him to leave. He left on his own. We thought we had a fresh start. I don't know if it's the culture, if it's a system, it's protection of jobs, but to answer your question, I've watched that debate over the last 14 years. Every time they wanted to hire someone that didn't live in DeKalb, Bernanke would come forward, well, things have changed. We've got 2 working households. The wife might work in Chicago, maybe they live in St. Charles. We can't get the quality person unless we let them live outside the city. It comes up with police and fire expanding, contracting the area that they live. I have always believed that everyone should live within the city limits and spend their checks here. I'm sorry, what did you say?
Quality people don't want to live in DeKalb?
No, the argument that always swayed the council into letting them live wherever else is that if the wife went 45 minutes the other way, and well, significant other, and the person we hired was in DeKalb, we couldn't expect that person to drive 90 minutes, and they tried to split the difference. So I can understand how we got there. But only the city manager has to live here, other than fire and police have their boundaries for the most part. I heard it mentioned that this ordinance, the underlying, under the guise of health and safety and things that are important to all of us, I think what almost slid through was something that is a money grab. I objected a few years ago when the finances were still smoke and mirrors, which, by the way, I'm sure they're not fixed. I'm sure that they really don't know where the money's at. They easily could do it like the state of Illinois and say everything looks good because all those accounts payables aren't entered into the system yet, so they don't count. I believe that former staff created that smoke and mirrors so that they could get their raises, bonuses at the end of the year. These are all things that I've been very frustrated about. The staff behind the scenes said, Dave, you're the only one who understands that the money's really not there when they presented it. Now, Anne Marie did a good thing. She combined that budget into $70 million. When they presented it separately in the pass-throughs, and they would also say, okay, the fund balances are here, but the general fund is here. I mean, Tom Tarazinski stopped me and said, well, Dave, anybody can read a footnote on a balance sheet, and what that says is that these fund balances are supported by the general fund. Actually, that's another word for, I call it, commingled, because you don't really know what's going on because you're pretending that money's there when it's not. If you filled up the funds where they were supposed to be a few years ago, we were $2 million short. We weren't $4 million in good. And it was $6 million off. I don't know that they see anything but to tax and spend their way out of this problem instead of facing it. The council, we don't get the right numbers. I mean, Dave, if you see some other ideas here, I mean, I'll sit down because I just got a little passionate for a minute and wanted to answer your question. I don't know the answer, but you've got to get involved in the political process. We have council people up there right now. When I talk to them and they say what they feel, and then they vote differently. And I said, why'd you do that? I said, well, you know, I'm going to jump onto the side that I told you that I believe in only when I think it's going to make the difference. We don't know what they're going to vote. And I
Let me
guess
ask
I
you
get
a
in trouble
question.
because I always speak my mind.
How about the ability to keep these people, or you know, we hire them, but they're only here for a couple years, 3 years, and it's almost like a resume producer where, you know, you know, I worked in DeKalb, I was here 3 years, and I'm actually just looking for the next job. You know, it's just like a stepping stone. Why can't you guys, as council members, demand that these people live in DeKalb?
Well, we could. We don't have a lot of say over the individuals. That's a city manager's job. Might be nice to consider a mayoral form of government. I don't know. But we can have a little bit of input, but we still, the city manager pretty much picks their team. And this is the first time I've seen a change in the city manager since, well, 10 years now, something like that. She might be real good. She's certainly very knowledgeable. She certainly has the experience, but on a political end, boy, they sure didn't get it when they thought it was important to work on that behind the scenes, bring it forward, recommend it, because so many city councils in the past have been rubber stamped. Staff recommends, let's just rubber stamp it. And I really think it would have gone through first and second reading had not many of you shown up that night.
Dave, I wonder, a couple of weeks ago, Eric Hicks and Andrew Igor met with our group, and they had said that the shift was going to be away from safe-built to third party to the fire department to do the inspections. And Eric Hicks told us that there would be a cost of $240,000 to implement that. And Anne Marie Gore told us that that would be new expenditure. Where's the revenue stream for that $240,000 increase? Is that going to be a new tax?
I'm going to try to give my pluses and minuses. I trust a fireman in uniform before I trust somebody that's part-time. They only got $18 an hour to lose their job if they want to pick a bone with somebody, and then who's the oversight. The way I believe that fire contract is being negotiated, I don't think the firemen have anything more than maybe verbalized or maybe agreed at a certain level that they might go along with that. It's done in many communities throughout Chicagoland. I think $50, maybe $100 is the average fee. The theory is they're going to come in and check fire extinguishers and check maybe a fire plan if you've got some chemicals in a certain room, certainly the fire exits. Other than the fire extinguishers and an annual fee that I know some communities, I can think of one right now, Highland Park is $70 a year for something like that. The way I believe that it would be funded is maybe 25% being from the annual fee of adding 900 to what they already do, 300 and something inspections. I believe those 360 inspections, like gas stations, are taking over for the state fire marshal that I think threw it back on us a couple of years ago, like the hotels. And I would imagine they're going to hire, and this is kind of a problem for me, they have to hire one person to kind of be the gatekeeper and administrator of that. And then there will be a little bit of part-time in there, but probably more administrative than anything, because if they use on-duty firemen, theoretically, it's not going to be an extra cost. We already have that fixed cost. If they pull up in the fire truck and they're ready to go to a fire call.
Hey Dave, have the firemen agreed to do this, take on this new responsibility without pay increases?
I think the council believes that the firemen are probably agreeing to that, but I think it's in negotiations where we aren't able to talk about it. I don't think it's set in stone. But it has been my understanding, and I think we don't really know for sure, but if 3/4 of it is from the general fund with no new revenue, then that would be part of what we are already running through that general fund. Theoretically, the community might save on fire insurance if we can change our ISO rating or IS rating, I'm not sure exactly. That logic could prevail, but I still think that something really has to be done by the city manager, where she needs to get her new person in on November 20th. If that person's a miracle maker, like Bill Nicholas was back in the day when nothing could get through as far as permits and you get roadblocked, and he would step in and say, how can I fix this, how can I help? You know, we don't have somebody that can just come in and be a jack of all trades to get permitting and business-friendly things to happen. But who knows? Maybe she'll say they all go. Maybe it all gets farmed out. I'm looking at an empty room right here. Baxter Woodman was in this room. Certainly if there wasn't all those people on the city staff and a person needed a permit, they could come here, hire them, and it could get done. That was the theory a few years ago. But things happen really slowly. And as Mike Coughlin said, to undo something that accidentally gets through, you need 5 people to get it off. Or maybe 6. I guess you need 6 sometimes to get it off out of the 8. The mayor didn't used to vote. Now the mayor votes under Polson. Dean Frieder suggested we change the law to mirror what the state intended. I don't know. It was one of those things where it went through without us really understanding.
Maybe you should have thought about it before you got rid of a trained cooking department to do the inspections. People that were trained to do the very thing that you're trying to hire people to do now.
Well, I'm going to try to be politically correct on this. The problem with the buildings and things that have been overlooked that I believe were presented in that committee of the whole meeting have been overlooked for decades. And absolutely those inspectors, fire chiefs, inspectors, they were all told to look the other way because people had enough control over the council to be able to tell them not to do it.
Wurlitzer has been in the hands of the city attorney for years, and they didn't want to pull the pin on the thing. And now they're using that for an excuse to start inspecting everybody's places.
I'm not in favor of them blanket inspecting every other place every year. For them to pick out 3 examples, I guess they want to pick out those 3 examples. But we can go through every building in the community that has problems, which were presented in, many of them presented in that committee of the whole. I wasn't at that meeting, I'm sorry, I missed one. But I did see a lot of those buildings as far as the pictures of things that have been overlooked. There was a problem in the past, and I'm not saying it's the inspector's fault. I'm saying it was the politicians that pressured the city manager to tell the inspectors, forget about that building, forget about that problem. there has to be a sort of
It's been in
reasonableness
the
as
hands
well.
of the city attorney for years.
Which one?
Before this city attorney was here.
I'm not gonna argue the wordlets or had anything to do with this. Maybe the staff wants to hang on their hat on that, but I'm not going to.
That's why if you look actually in our ordinance, it holds not only the business owners responsible, but it holds the city responsible. There's language in this ordinance that says that you must be fair and treat all buildings equally when you're inspecting them. The other thing I think is, that's an issue, which Mike Coughlin brought up, is even if you have the firefighters, they want the firefighters, you to consent your rights to walk through the entire building, not only the public areas, but also the private areas. We've heard a lot of comments that say, I don't want to give up my rights, I don't want to give up my consent. That's where the public needs to get involved in this discussion, is you can say no and follow the law and OSHA law and the law that's on the books. Why would you want to give up your rights as business owners to consent even to firefighters to walk through your entire building? I guess I'd like whoever is okay with that, I mean, feel free to stand up, or maybe there's other conversation, but I mean, we would like that input from your from the people sitting out here. Are you okay with giving your consent to have a firefighter walk through your entire building, not only the public area, but the private area? Now, under the current code, the city does have the right to inspect public areas of what they call public accommodation. And it kind of goes to your point of the city, and even the city council members said, we haven't been strong enough to enforce the ordinances that are on the books. Another council member said, we have ordinances on the books, we just don't enforce them. The city of DeKalb references the International Building Code as its code book. It's over 700 pages long. There's plenty of codes. That's why we're saying you need to treat everybody equal in a fair manner. We recommend a citizens board. There's a lot of good stuff in this ordinance. And we're open to suggestions to make it better and add stuff to it. What other comments, questions?
Do you have an alderman that will introduce that ordinance for discussion?
The city, on Monday night, is my understanding, the city has released a timeline. The city manager is going to present that of basically their timeline is they've got one more meeting, then on November 21st they're going to have a group meeting with all the groups that they've met with. They're going to formulate a summary memo by December 8th with a concept to a council, and that's what's concerning as a concept, because it's what Mike Coughlin talked about. It's words. Concepts mean nothing.
Right.
It's the words. A scheduled public hearing for January 12th. They declined 2 public hearings, and it wasn't until we have that on file in our records that they declined 2. We